small enough for children and storage buildings meant for human cargo. Dublin's Norsemen didn't just plunder gold and silver, they plundered bodies. A captured wife became a commodity, not a person. In the markets, the going price was coldly calculated: 20 silver for a young woman, 15 for a mother, 10 for one injured during capture. These figures are carved into runic inscriptions in Schleswig, receipts in stone, yet being sold was sometimes the best possible fate. In 862, the Vikings stormed the settlement of Portmarnock. The Irish annals record 47 warriors killed, but nothing about the 53 women seized in the longhouses. Soil tests from nearby bogs fill in the silence. 23 female bodies, all showing deliberate violence. None of these deaths were chaotic. The wounds followed patterns: skulls fractured from behind, forearms shattered from defense, ribs broken by prolonged assault. These weren't battle casualties. These were executions, carried out days after the raid, after decisions had been made. The pattern repeats. In 871, the Great Heathen Army captured Reading. Chroniclers note King Ethelred's defeat, but omit the royal women's fate. Excavations at the old Saxon palace reveal stones stained with iron oxide, blood residue, enough for dozens of deaths. Norse war culture had laws, strict ones. A slain warrior's wife became the lawful property of his killer, not as a servant, but as a forced wife. The old Norse word was kona, owned woman. Property that breathes. Icelandic law codes spell out the ritual. The captor declared ownership before witnesses. The woman had no choice, no voice, no escape. The marriage was legal. Any children born were legitimate. The assault was not just tolerated, it was written into law. The Gragas law codes were explicit. The claim had to be made within 3 days of capture, or rivals could contest it. Women were fought over like livestock, and forced marriage wasn't even the worst fate. In 8788, Norse raiders destroyed the monastery at Bangor. The annals record its annihilation, but not the ritual that followed. Burn layers at similar sites tell the truth. Bone fragments from women arranged in deliberate patterns. Norse funerary rites demanded sacrifice. When a warrior died, so did his horses, his weapons, his women. Ibn Fadlan describes such a scene on the Volga in 921, the ritual rape and killing of a slave girl at her master's funeral. Archaeology confirms it wasn't an isolated event. Boat burials across Scandinavia contain female skeletons with strangulation marks, drug traces in teeth, evidence of being subdued with henbane before death. They went to the pyre, dazed, hallucinating, compliant. Perhaps that dulled the terror, or perhaps it was worse. By 907, the Great Army wintered at Thetford. Chronicles mention cattle stolen and churches burned, nothing of what happened inside the camp. The rubbish heaps speak instead. Infant bones, dozens of them, bearing blunt force trauma. Not stillbirths, murders. Viking law was clear. If the mother was a slave, the child was a slave. If the child couldn't work, the child was killed. Brutal economics. The Domesday Book later records the practice still alive under the Normans. Population studies in Yorkshire show gaps exactly where Norse settlements had been. The bones at Repton confirm it. The Great Army's camp of 873-874 contained 249 skeletons. Only 63 were women. Women don't vanish unless they are carried away. Isotope analysis of the female remains proves they weren't locals, but captives brought from Ireland, Scotland, and Wales. Those in graves were the fortunate, dead from childbirth or disease. The rest disappeared into the slave routes. Viking Dublin wasn't just a port. It was a hub of human trafficking. Weekly ships brought fresh captives. Women were sorted by age, the young sent to Norse farms as breeding stock, the older shipped east into the Islamic slave markets along the Russian rivers. Dendrochronology, the study of tree rings on Dublin's waterfront posts, reveals a story. Continuous rebuilding from 841 to 970, more than 60 years of steady expansion. That growth wasn't for fishing or trade in furs, it was for something darker. The slave markets were thriving. Each new dock meant more space for ships, more storage for human cargo. The warehouses themselves tell the tale. Foundations built of stone, designed to hold up to 200 captives at once. Drainage channels carved into the floors, not for stormwater, for human waste. These weren't temporary pens to hold prisoners before transport. They were long-term storage facilities, human stockrooms. Arabic chroniclers of the 9th century described Viking slave caravans that reached as far as Baghdad. The women fetched premium prices in eastern markets. Pale-skinned women from Germanic and Celtic lands were treated as rare luxuries, displayed like exotic goods. The Vikings understood their buyers and supplied the trade with ruthless efficiency. If you value documented Viking and Norse history like this, don't forget to subscribe. It helps us. The main eastern slave route wound its way through Novgorod and Kiev, stretching more than 1,000 miles along the Dnieper River. Rune-carved ship manifests have been found, listing slaves alongside amber and furs. The figures are chilling, about 20 women per ship, the standard load. But captivity wasn't the worst fate a woman could face. It wasn't being sold. It wasn't forced marriage. It wasn't even ritual sacrifice. The most terrifying fate awaited the women who dared resist. In 914, Irish forces managed to retake Dublin from Norse control. The annals of the Four Masters describe the triumph, the city freed, the Vikings driven out. But the records say nothing of what was found outside the walls. Archaeology has since filled the silence. Excavations revealed punishment pits, stone-lined holes intended for a slow death. Inside were skeletons bearing distinctive injuries, legs broken so escape was impossible, arms shattered to prevent suicide. These women weren't killed quickly. They were kept alive to suffer. Each pit measured 6 feet deep and 3 feet across, too small to lie flat, too shallow to stand upright. The victims perished, crouched in agony, death creeping over days, sometimes weeks. Viking law codes confirm the punishment. Any slave woman who harmed or killed her master was to be buried alive. But it was never a swift burial. The pit was shallow enough to allow air, but too deep to escape. Victims died of thirst, cold, or exhaustion. Archaeological soil analysis from Dublin's execution grounds supports this. Decomposition layers indicate prolonged death, not immediate burial. Some pits contained sharp stones to tear flesh. Others had standing water to drown the victims slowly. The goal wasn't only death, it was prolonged agony, a lesson to others. Captives were forced to watch, learning exactly what defiance would bring. By 919, Norwegian King Harald Fairhair consolidated his rule. The civil wars among the Norse ended. Expansion slowed. Yet the slave economy did not disappear. It became more organized. With established trade routes came reliability. Captives could now be delivered on predictable schedules. Merchants promised delivery dates for people as if they were livestock. Byzantine trade records preserved the details. The Rus-Byzantine Treaty of 944 even lists slave prices by category. Young women commanded the highest rates. Pregnant women sold at a discount. Children under 10 were nearly worthless. The market had rules, calculations, and predictable supply chains. By 937, the last major Viking raid on Ireland came to an end at the Battle of Brunanburh. 5 kingdoms united to defeat the Norse invasion. The victory was decisive, but what they discovered in the baggage train was even more telling. Portable breeding pens. These weren't crude cages, but carefully engineered frameworks. Iron fittings and wooden structures built to restrain humans during long marches or transport. Chains sized for children. Modular sections that could be assembled into larger compounds or disassembled for rapid movement. They were, in essence, mobile slave markets, traveling with the army itself. Each pen could hold a dozen adults or 20 children. Iron rings fixed into the wood anchored chains in place. Wear patterns show they were used constantly. This wasn't the occasional brutality of war. This was an organized system, built into the logistics of campaigning. For the Vikings, war wasn't only about conquest or plunder, it was about harvesting people. The wives and daughters of defeated warriors weren't simply collateral damage, they were the primary target. They were living resources to be seized, processed, and distributed. Archaeological surveys of Viking towns confirm it. Every major settlement had holding pens. Every harbour had processing sites. The infrastructure was everywhere, woven into daily life, hidden in plain sight. In 954, Eric Bloodaxe fell at Stainmore. With his death, the last Viking kingdom in England collapsed. But the networks of slavery didn't vanish. They were absorbed. Christian rulers inherited the infrastructure and renamed it. Records from monasteries describe the rise of indentured servants in massive numbers immediately after Viking defeats. These weren't voluntary contracts. They were the same women, the same captives, under a different label. Slaves rebranded for Christian markets. In 1066, Harold Hardrada died at Stamford Bridge, marking the end of the Viking Age in England. Yet archaeology reveals what the chronicles do not. Mass graves of women dated precisely to the years of Viking defeats. These women weren't killed in raids. They were executed, eliminated, evidence erased. The reason becomes clear at Repton. A mass grave, sealed in 986, was recently uncovered. 236 bodies, all female. Each bore signs of deliberate killing, blunt force trauma, strangulation, poisoning, but isotope testing revealed the shocking truth. These were not captives. They were Norse-born women. The grave dates to a moment when Viking power in England was collapsing. Norse towns were falling. The women buried there weren't enemy prisoners. They were the Vikings' own wives and daughters. Why? Because the men knew. They knew exactly what awaited